So, welcome to our first episode of M2 Chats, our podcast that is an outgrowth of a new venture that we started called M2 Aspire. As I'm knocking into the computer and shaking the little earthquake there, but let's introduce ourselves for the folks who are listening who don't yet know us. My name is Matt.
I'm Molly.
And we'll give you a little bit of backgrounds and what led us up to this point. We'll talk a little bit about M2 Aspire after that. So for the last 14 and a half years, I have been running a public affairs, strategic communications, and political consulting firm called Publitix. Name is soon to change, so stay tuned for that. But I've had the
opportunity. Maybe people can help us rename it.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That would be fun.
Little fan mail.
Yeah.
Do the mailbag episode.
That'd be fun.
That'd be pretty sweet. Mm-hmm. You know, when they, just as an aside before I continue the introduction, where, various government entities will run contests to name different things. Mm-hmm. And I think the UK government ran a contest to see what the new name of a research submarine would be. Oh. And the names were awesome. It was like, I think they landed on Bodie McBoatface.
Oh my gosh.
Which was awesome.
I heard about that and I didn't think it was real.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, mm-hmm. Well then.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, I grew up outside of in the DC area, and the basketball team used to be the Washington Bullets. And then it was like, oh, that's really bad. That's glorifying things we don't want to glorify. And then they changed the name, and I'm embarrassed to say right now as I'm trying to think of it, I can't remember what they changed the name to.
Did they have a contest?
They did have a contest.
Oh, okay.
And I remember there were, of all of the options, I hated the one they picked the most. Mm. So much so that I blocked the name. This also shows, apologies to people who follow professional basketball. I clearly do not. And dang it, now it's going to bug me what the name is.
We had a similar situation, I think, for our high school where they were fielding names, new names for our mascot. And they landed on, and this is not, they actually didn't officially rename it, but I think the
unofficial high school team name.
it wasn't even unofficial. I think it was the leading result was the Fighting Parsons, which was, for James Caldwell, who was a parson and also fought in the Revolution. So
man in a petticoat.
Yes.
Parson.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. So that was that. So anyway, soon to rename the name of my the public affairs firm that we both work at. And
this is the most fitting and appropriate start. If you have any questions about what we're like in real life, it's this. So I'll do my introduction and then I'll add in a quick aside after that as to maybe some more context as to why our podcast feels like it's all over the place. But my name is Molly McGarrick. I now work at Publitix. I spent the majority of my career in politics, working directly for candidates as well as for political parties on the state and the national level. I then went into government and leadership in government positions and ended up at the Department of Health and Social Services during the pandemic, which is kind of wild because when I was 12, I think I read a book by Robin Cook called Outbreak that then became the movie. And I thought it would be really awesome to be an epidemiologist. So in a weird way, I feel like I lived my 12-year-old self's dream. And I'm very glad that I did not pick that as my permanent career. Shout out to everyone that does that. Good Lord. But I left there in 2023 to open my own consulting practice and then decided to join Publitix earlier this year. But yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. And my quick aside is, if it wasn't obvious, we both have ADHD. So this podcast is probably not going to follow a typical format, whether that's the topics we discuss, the posting schedule, and we may be at tangents upon tangents, but we hope you'll join us for this magical ride that is M2 Chats.
Yeah, so that explains it. So,
and speaking of magic, what we want to talk about today.
Magic, which is kind of an interesting topic when you think about it. Seeing as going back to M2 Aspire, thinking about sort of our background. So again, both of us had worked in politics, government. So I've had the opportunity to work with leaders, members of Congress, presidential campaigns, business leaders on communications issues. And we had both arrived at the conclusion that before you even get to the communications part of a particular challenge that you're facing, there's all this sort of foundational work that leaders ultimately need to do. And we realized that there were a lot of blocks along the way before we could even get to doing the communications part, or even the operationalizing of whatever it was, policy, strategies, campaigns. There was some mindset work that needed to be done in order to get there. So we started to talk, and that was sort of how M2 Aspire was born, which is, a venture that is geared toward helping leaders, individuals, and organizations build resiliency, find clarity, and lead from within. So that's our new venture, and this podcast will be sort of a meandering exploration of a lot of different topics that may not seem like they fit neatly into the box of leadership or strategic communications, and may even seem a little odd for two people who have worked in the buttoned up world of politics and business previously. But we are thrilled to let you know that we're about to get weird with this, and and proud of that fact. And I think that we need a little bit more of that. So welcome to our show. So so magic. So we're talking about magic, and sort of, again, picturing yourself walking into a boardroom saying, let's talk about magic. You think you might get some different reactions from folks in the room, but it is applicable. So what brought us to this topic were some elves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There are two. As
you can probably tell from our decorations, we are knee deep in holiday season. It's the middle, approaching latter half of December, and there's a lot of elf on the shelf shenanigans happening, a lot of deep conversations about what part of Christmas is real and not real, and all the fun stuff that comes as your kids get older and ask really deep philosophical questions about life that you're never prepared to answer, but must in the moment.
Yeah. They're really tough conversations, because when you're thinking about real, what does real mean in that context? And for those of you listening, perhaps in a car or in proximity to family, we are not going to have any elf spoilers here. So, but what we are going to talk about is sort of the magic of elves, and what that sort of has taught us a little bit about presence and looking for beauty in life, and that magic in life. So again, having those conversations is really, really hard, but there is actually a very real magic that surrounds a lot of these things. And by magic, I don't necessarily mean the grand kind of Harry Potter thing where you wave a wand and someone goes flying across the room, or, you can conjure various things. If only.
That'd be so fun.
And I'm not saying it doesn't exist. If anyone out there is listening and has those abilities, I would love to hear about it. In fact,
yeah, we'd love to have you on as a guest.
Absolutely. So if you're out there, actually anyone listening, so we are looking for guests as we start to develop this meandering show. So if you're up for,
come be weird with us.
Weird conversations that kind of wind their way to a point eventually.
Hopefully,
we'll see by the end of this episode. Email us.
Goal at least.
You can email us at matt@m2aspire.com or molly@m2aspire.com. Either of us, both of us. It's up to you how you want to do it, but happy to have you on the podcast. So reach out. And so back to magic though. So thinking through these difficult conversations about what magic looks like and what doesn't. And that, got us to sort of reflecting on this idea of presence and what that means in our life, and how, in all of the ways.
Clear, presence, not presenced with a T.
Oh, I meant presence.
Presents, like holiday presents?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we're not talking about.
No, I thought we were talking about presents.
Oh.
With a C.
Oh, okay. So presents, right? So all the.
Be clear.
Well, presence is a present.
It's true. It can be. Oh my God.
Sorry.
Be prepared for lots of
puns.
Wordplay.
Mm-hmm. Horny
things that probably
jokes.
would be characterized as dad jokes. You'll find them all here.
all here. You're in the right place. So presence is what we're talking about, and all of the places in which we seem to avoid being present in life. And I will say that as one of the worst offenders historically of sort of just trying to get through things and get to an endpoint, get to an outcome. And there's a lot that you can miss. But, when you're thinking about the sort of joy and laughter and things that, like, two very mischievous elves on a shelf can bring to a household or to a situation, that really is magic. It's sort of this beautiful thing. And I think, we tend to, as we get older and start asking those questions about what's real, what isn't real, we end up in this sort of headspace where we lose a lot of that wonder and that awe for things that exist in everyday life. So it's kind of a journey, and I think kids have it right in a lot of ways. I mean, just thinking about like how the kids will react to fire trucks, right? It's just something that we see on a fairly regular basis as adults, and I think most of us probably watch them go by and it's got to get out of the way. It's another fire truck. Wonder what's happening with that. But it's not like, whoa, look at the cool red truck with the lights and the hoses and all the equipment, and it's super awesome. And like, how do they make turns?
I know. Talk about magic. Good Lord. I would be taking out like cars, fire hydrants, probably some trees if I had to drive, one of those hook and ladder trucks that have that's just like, that's wild.
Sorry about your mirror.
I know, right?
Leave a note. Whoops.
Fire business, no note.
But yeah, I mean, like we lose that, I think, sense of awe and wonder around things that exist in everyday life. And, thinking about the sort of metaphor of running for the horizon, right? You're always thinking that the endpoint, the outcome that you're looking for is just beyond the horizon, but the reality is the horizon moves with you, right? And you can never catch it. So if you're so fixated on looking out to the horizon, you're missing the journey, the tens of thousands of miles that you've traveled, and that process and the beautiful things that have happened along the way. They kind of go in sort of one side of your brain and not the other, and you're not really experiencing it. And I've had experiences with this too, just thinking about some of the more difficult and stressful times of my life over the last couple of years. And I used to, my office, our former headquarters was right down the street from a park, and it was a beautiful park. And I would go there and I would walk loops around the park, which ended up sort of becoming a metaphor for what was going on in my head, where I would just loop and loop and loop. And I was so fixated on walking and getting through the laps around the park that I wasn't actually experiencing the park. I wasn't in the park. I was just sort of traversing the paths. And mentally, I was in that loop of just thinking about all of the things that were causing me anxiety. What do I have to do next? What sorts of things do I have to pay attention to? What do I have to try to mitigate damage from, or try to control? And so it was very much in my own head, missing the trees, the sound of the birds, the blue sky, the breeze, all of those things. And for whatever reason, one day I was walking through the park, and this really sort of opened the door in a concrete way to this idea of presence and like finding magic in everyday life. But it was a particularly stressful day, a lot going on in my personal life, work, right in the middle of campaign season. As you know, campaign season is bananas. It's like, 24/7. There's, your phone's always ringing. There's always something going on. So, we're sitting there cutting advertisements for candidates and putting together, mailers and designing things and dealing with crisis after crisis.
It's funny because it is kind of like Christmas, where there's this sense of like this day, like it's all leading up to this day and it's over. So, you've got to pack everything in.
Yeah, you do. And it's so funny to talk about getting fixated in an outcome. I mean, it feels like, at least early in my career, and I still struggle with this a little bit today, even though we're doing fewer of those types of things, but that it's a binary outcome, like an up or down vote on your career. And that if you lose a campaign, that could be it for you forever. And that there is no in between, right? Did you outperform expectations? Did you run a solid campaign, but just fell short? Did something happen that was completely out of your control, which happens all the time in campaigns, right? You just don't know what's out there, what your candidate is going to do, or what the other person's going to do, or world events, weather it can make an impact in these sorts of things. it just sort of felt like, an outcome, like we have to get to the win at the end of it. You're just running in a full sprint. It's incredibly stressful. There's very little margin for error, or at least that's what it feels like. I think there probably is more.
At least in a winner take all, like the way our campaigns work. Yes, some states are changing that to runoffs and things like that. But for the most part, it's plurality wins. It's whoever has the most votes, it's over.
So it is a yes or no in a lot of cases. Yeah. So, I mean, from a career perspective, it also felt like a yes or no in the career, which is always a tough thing. So in the middle of campaign season, a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. And for whatever reason this day, I was doing the same thing that I would always do. I'd go for a couple laps around the park, and I passed by this bench that by the pond in the park that I had passed by probably 100 times before, never bothered to stop, or had stopped on different occasions. And I decided that day, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to stop and sit and enjoy the weather. It was this sort of idyllic day. The temperature was perfect. There were a ton of people out in the park, birds chirping, blue skies, light breeze, families out, kids fishing in the pond.
Fall day, like one of those days where you're like, I love life. It's beautiful.
It was absolutely beautiful. The leaves were just starting to change, but the temperature was like a little unseasonably warm, but the sun was just like, when you're sitting there and the sun just hits you and it's warm and it's not. So it was one of those things. And I just sat there and paused for a moment, and it's like, suddenly I was like, wow, there's so many amazing things happening here. There are people laughing, there are people enjoying themselves. There are, the breeze blowing through the leaves that are changing colors. And, this phrase kind of popped into my head amidst all of the chaos and turmoil in my life at that moment. In this moment, everything is beautiful. And it was. And the reality of the situation is I could think, or try to think my way through all of the issues that were occurring in my life and try to think through the next 10 steps of what needed to be done, get caught in an anxiety loop, but none of that would have actually prevented anything from happening in those moments. So it was interesting being able to stop in that moment and just be like, I can't do anything about that. I'm going to release control of all of that and just sit in the magic of watching a duck, float by in the pond, which, by the way, is an incredibly relaxing thing. I definitely feel a little bit of a kinship with Tony Soprano, where there was a couple of, it may have been one episode or two episodes where a duck came and landed in his pool, which actually happened to me as well, where I used to live. I had a pool, duck landed in the pool. I was so excited about it. I'm like, oh, duck, this is awesome. I brought it berries and things like that to feed it.
I love that.
And I would sit out there and watch it, and it would just kind of waddle around the yard, eating worms and grubs and stuff from the garden. And I was really bummed out when it left, as Tony Soprano was. It's funny if you're watching that, and he totally kind of loses his mind over the fact that the duck leaves. Like, it felt like a massive overreaction, but in that moment when that duck left, I was like, oh, I get it. I totally understand it. It makes sense. So yeah, that was sort of like opening the door to this idea of presence and being able to see magic, because the reality of life is it's hard, right? Life can be difficult. There are ups and downs. There's sadness. There's grief. There's anxiety. There are, struggles, actual things and it's all a condition of existing, right? This gift of existence that we have. But you can also sit there and find all of the, beautiful things in these moments. And if you're so fixated on that journey again, or so fixated at the end point where you miss the journey, you miss, again, a lot of that magic in life. So it's sort of like reflecting on that through the lens of elves, right? You can really miss the journey there and those moments, those pockets of joy, pockets of magic in life. So it's kind of a fascinating thing.
Yeah. And I think pockets of connection too. We have a lot of fun decorating for holidays, and we this year for Halloween decorated a little early and just had so much fun when we were doing the outside decorations, putting up these little mini skeletons and figuring out different ways to pose them. And one was doing a split. Another one looked like it was falling from a light. Like, how you see, spies and action heroes, like, kind of falling back. And if we were so focused on, well, we've got to get up these decorations because then we've got to move to the next thing, we would have missed all the laughter and the fun and the joy that came from trying to pose these stupid little skeletons. Like, in the grand scheme of things, especially as adults, I don't think we keep raising the bar in the sense of, well, I can't relax unless I have a vacation, or a self-care looks like a spa day, or, these things that are real luxuries. I mean, they're not very realistic on a regular basis for most people. They're very expensive. They're very time consuming. But we kind of push off joy, relaxation, etc. for those big things. And the reality is, like you said, kids have it right in a lot of ways because they are way more present and way more willing to grab the joy and the fun and the silliness of everyday life, as opposed to saying, well, I'm going to keep my head down and I'm going to keep plowing forward and I'm going to get to this outcome and then I'll play later. I'll experience joy later. I'll rest later. That later never comes. Like you said, you keep moving the goalposts and keep saying, well, I got one more thing. I've got one more thing. I've got one more thing. And what a loss. I know I have missed so many of those moments trying to pack things in. A friend of mine and I joke that the two of us get along so well because we are always trying to pack 8 pounds in a 5-pound bag. And I've really tried to let some of that go because there's no room for magic and for life to happen when you're just constantly checking boxes and having your head down, like you said, and just looping around the park and not seeing the ducks, not seeing life happening around you.
Yeah. And so, you all may be wondering now what this has to do with leadership development, developing resiliency. Actually, I think there's a very clear line to developing resiliency and finding clarity in life and in work. But, thinking in a work context, I think probably, again, imagine walking into a boardroom and talking about Elf on the Shelf, other than sort of small talk kind of banter. It's not something that you would expect to hear. And yet, we are, and I think this goes missing a lot. We are whole humans. Mm-hmm. We show up to life as entire humans, and whether or not, we like it, and we might try really hard to wall off different parts of ourselves, right? We might try to silo off our personal lives from our work lives, or work lives from our personal lives. And the reality is we bring home to work and we bring work home, and then everything else in between. And so if you're thinking about how you're performing in the workplace, or how you're leading teams, or ensuring that you're not getting burnt out as a leader, an individual, or a part of an organization, you have to consider all of it. You can't just address the work part. You have to address all of it. And I think that's the sort of lesson here is developing that sense of presence and ability to be present in all facets of our life. And again, look for that magic in life is incredibly applicable to all of our experience, both work or otherwise. And I think the more that we acknowledge that, the better off we're going to be, the better teams are going to perform, the better organizations are going to perform, and the better we're going to feel in our life. And it's not about perfection. We talk a lot about perfectionism. I certainly struggle with it. It's thinking about even doing a podcast, right? So this podcast for us is we've been talking about doing a podcast for a while, and it's sort of like, it started out as, well, the lights need to be perfect, the backdrop, the microphones, the equipment,
what we're wearing,
the script.
At least for me, I'm like, oh no, I've got to look a certain way. Like, this is what people look like who have podcasts. This is this persona, this mask of, well, to do this, one has to be like this.
Exactly.
Which is not like how I am. So I've got to change something or do something different before I can step forward and do the thing.
Exactly. And and this idea that the first episode has to be this polished kind of thing. And this most certainly isn't. I mean, we've been all over the map, and I kind of like it. Actually, I'm not going to apologize for it. I love it.
I was going to say, I mean, we would be pretending, we'd be fooling ourselves more than probably anyone to pretend like we're going to have this super linear, buttoned up, clear agenda, posting consistently type of podcast. And trying to do that, I think we actually did talk about that. Well, before we even start recording, we've got to figure out, are we going to post weekly? Are we going to, how long is it going to be? What's the format? Like, we were getting caught up in trying to make the perfect podcast versus just starting to do it and being willing to learn along the way and have the journey and grow as part of doing this. I mean, anytime you're embarking on something and going through a journey, like, it changes you, and it's not always clear. I mean, that is the magic of the journey. It's not always clear where it's going to ripple, and what you set in motion by beginning something and being willing to consistently show up and do something, and just embracing that and loosening the grip on the steering wheel a little bit, to let the journey surprise you in ways that you don't expect.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing here, is just kind of letting it rip. And again, you can push things off infinitely if you are waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect setup, the perfect everything. So we're diving right into the deep end with that. But I mean, even thinking about presence and trying to cultivate presence in life, I will tell you that I am far from perfect in doing that. And one of the things that we talk a lot about with our clients, whether it's on the strategic communication side of things, whether it's on the coaching leadership development side of things, or we run programs in executive presence, even meditation program that we're building out right now. So as we're talking about these things with people, it's not setting up a crazy expectation of what it's going to look like when you're done. It's about these little improvements. So if I told you today that you could just be a little bit happier, a little bit more satisfied, a little bit more grounded in your life, a little bit more resilient in your life, I think most of us would take that, right? Not saying it has to be perfect every day. You have to be spotless every moment of your life. I think that sets up this expectation. You're essentially building a Mount Everest in front of you, and and then you're looking all the way up at the summit saying, how am I going to get up there? This is going to be an incredibly hard journey.
Yep. And also pretending, like, being unwilling to take the incremental steps is like telling the person you have to scale Mount Everest in 3 steps.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's not about the preparation, the work of showing up and doing the certain amount of miles you have to do every day. It's, well, if you can't do it in 3 steps, don't even bother climbing, which is crazy. If someone said that, you'd be like, what are you talking about? Yeah. That feels impossible. But that's what we do to ourselves every day by saying, I can't begin a podcast unless it looks like a top 1% podcast right out the gate.
Yeah. I mean, to use a baseball analogy, which is hilarious because I don't watch or play baseball anymore, though I will say, here's another aside for all of you listening. I did play baseball, T-ball, 2nd grade through 8th grade. And, the funny part about it is, I was not terrible, but I always ended up on these teams that lost every single game, and like viciously too. So we were 0 and whatever for all the way through 8th grade. And the funniest part is the teams would bear the name of local businesses that were sponsoring it, or they would have like actual names, like, it's like the blank Yankees or the Tigers or whatever, like cool names. But we were, for a couple years straight, Gurian Hearing and Vision, which was, she said, so they're no longer with us, that business, as far as I know, but,
hopefully you retired and are off to bigger and better things.
I sure hope so. But it was like hearing aids and glasses. So, when you're stepping up to the plate, it's like now stepping up to bat for Gurian Hearing and Vision. It's like not the kind of,
doesn't have that oomph.
Not the vibe,
Not the vibe.
Doesn't instill gusto, the sort of thing that but
the fear.
Yeah, but it was hilarious though. Every time we would step up there in our green jerseys, and we would get absolutely rocked by the other teams. Like, we were mercy ruled more than once each season, and finally got to 8th grade, and ended up on a winning team. We won a couple games, which was amazing for me. I'm like, this is the first time we've ever won a game. This is awesome.
This feeling is amazing.
Yeah, it's this is,
I'm on top of
this is what it feels like. Yeah, and we actually had a real we actually had a real team name too.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so it was cool.
The stars aligned.
Yeah, so the stars aligned. It was really.
Oh, this is Emmy. She'll make guest appearances too.
She will. She might knock everything over.
Pause in the face.
She's bored of us actually already. Look at that. Nope, she's coming back.
Nope.
I don't know. But yeah, so we ended up winning a couple games, and then I caught mono, and the team went to the playoffs. I couldn't play the rest of the season. It was such a bummer. But the reason I'm talking about baseball, which has nothing to do with anything that I just talked about, I just thought it was kind of funny to share that anecdote and give you some background on me. And I do think actually there were some lessons.
Yeah, this is why you became an entrepreneur, because you're used to showing up every day with hope in your heart, despite all data to the contrary.
Exactly. It's just like repeatedly losing and
That's why you're in politics. Are you a glutton for punishment? You belong in politics.
Come here, apply for this job. We want you. Yeah, it was good though. It was actually, I mean, talk about finding a way to enjoy the process of something. It's, the kids that were in the team are hilarious. They were a lot of fun. We had we joked a lot about our misfortunes from an actual record perspective, an actual gameplay perspective. So it was kind of cool.
Fellow Gurians gathered around.
Fellow Gurians gathered around the campfire. Yeah, so that was the fun part. So enjoying the process, and again, it was a lot of laughs were shared, and it was just hilarity all around. When you're losing that much, but again, the reason why, I was bringing up baseball is if you are in the pros and you're batting 350, 400, or even 300, there's a good chance that you might end up in the Hall of Fame. And that means that you're not hitting, hitting singles every time. You're certainly not hitting home runs every time. Apply that to life, right? Like if you could bat 300 in your life and end up in the Hall of Fame, whatever that means to you, that's a pretty good deal, I think. And it's, again, not about being perfect. It's just about making those consistent improvements, and then kind of making peace with the fact that that consistency isn't always going to show up, right? You're going to have bad days. I certainly have bad days, and I'm not able to apply all of those lessons. But I think, awareness is the first step. So
awareness is definitely the first step, because you can't fix something you're not even conscious of.
Yeah.
Not even noticing in your life.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's that level of again, not approaching it with this sense of it has to be perfect. I have to bat 1,000, because you don't actually have to bat 1,000.
And it's really not sustainable. And this is probably something we're going to talk about in another episode, that people are so down on incremental changes. And there is this sense, just the way that people talk about their origin story of, and you've talked about this a lot, I know, on other podcasts, just around I started my business and blah, 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 and now I'm a millionaire, or I have a jet, or I'm successful. It's like, okay, well, what's the da-da-da-da-da? Where's that part of the story? And so it gives this false sense that people are scaling Everest in 3 jumps, when they're not. A lot of people who try to climb Everest end up not making it to the top, or they have to do it multiple times. There's, you have to sometimes step back or step sideways before you then go forward again. And there's just so much that it's like, we so badly want the easy button. We so badly want to be perfect right out the gate and not have to do the messy work of the journey. But it's not realistic. And chances are, even if you are, maybe you can take that first, if you think you're going to do it in 3 leaps and you take that first leap, even if that goes well, that's not sustainable. I mean, that's where you see, it's like the people, and Lord knows, we're getting ready to head into the new year, and everyone has I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week. Well, how long does that last? Because you're going from being relatively sedentary to 5 days a week. It's too much. It's too much for our systems. Yeah. It's not sustainable. You're not building habits. And the person that does that is way less likely to achieve the goal or the outcome than the person who says, well, I'm going to start off by taking a walk 2 days a week. And then I'm going to add in some more, and I'm going to add in and add in. And it's not trying to glorify, jam packing things in, but just you're going to get to an outcome so much, probably even faster than you would think, by just pacing yourself, pacing yourself and making consistent progress versus holding yourself to these unrealistic standards that you may never even begin because they're so intimidating.
Yeah. And two, like, even if you miss a day in that process, not throwing up your hands and throwing all of it out the window and be like, oh, I don't want to do this. Or like, I can't do this. Like, obviously it's like, I failed. This is, I'm no good.
I love the analogy. I cannot remember where I heard it. Not original. I wish it was, where someone said, well, if you trip on a stair, you don't throw yourself down the whole staircase. And same thing, like if you miss a day, that doesn't negate everything you've done up to that point. And it doesn't diminish the results of the outcome if you keep going, that you missed a day or the steps weren't perfect along the way. It's like, keep going. Don't throw yourself down the stairs just because you tripped.
Yeah. I mean, that is a great analogy. And as someone who at times has thought about, like, maybe I will throw myself down the stairs just because I tripped. Like, this is all BS. I think I hate this.
I tend to trip upstairs.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
I don't pick up my feet enough.
Down is fine. Up, for whatever reason, is a challenge.
Yeah.
For both of us. I don't know, neurodivergence, I guess. And
it's wild. They're just not being present. I've realized that I'm thinking about other things and I'm not picking my feet up. I catch my toe, wipe out.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Womp womp.
I do it all the time.
But yeah, so trying to kind of bring this back around. We can go on all the tangents.
We promise it does come back around eventually.
I hope it does. We have to see. So we were talking about, incremental progress, seeing the magic in just individual moments and those periods of respite. And we are in winter, and this is a time of year when, at least in the Northern Hemisphere and where we are, it's darker earlier, it's colder outside. It sort of lends itself to more rest, more spaces, more pauses. And even if the rest of society is telling you to ignore what you're seeing in nature and keep pressing forward, there are little pockets of opportunities to take that rest. And we did a quick little video for our TikTok account earlier where we talked about this concept of like motivation versus clarity, and just thinking about the example that you gave of walking around the park and keeping your head down versus just taking that moment to sit on the bench, kind of take yourself out of the rumination cycle and the anxiety loop and just be like, wow, this is gorgeous. This is amazing. You probably went back to whatever was on your to-do list or that next meeting with a lot more clarity and presence, and then probably motivation than you did, not just before you took that break, but probably comparing it to other times that you just looped and looped and looped and exhausted yourself and probably made yourself feel even more anxious than before you got there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you walk into the next meeting thinking, what can I do in this moment? As opposed to the next 10 steps ahead. Like, I am here right now. And that is all I have in this moment, is right now. So just be here.
Yep.
And that helps a lot in working through, especially like difficult, tense kind of situations. Like, I am here now. So like, if we're trying to cut together, like thinking about election season, like I'm trying to cut together an ad, that's been giving us some trouble, or we're, trying to tweak things or make it right, or do something on a tight deadline. You sit down and you're just like, this is the task in front of me right now. This one thing, just make this one cut, this one transition, this one edit to whatever it is. Take that first step. That's all I have. I'm not going to think about the 10 other things I have to do after that, which again is really hard to do. Definitely not perfect at that. But I think moments like that, sitting on that bench, give you that clarity and that space to be like, all right, I am here now. What can I do in this moment? And it's just that, just doing the doing the one cut, one transition, moving something around a little bit, tweaking the music. You know,
And maybe that clarity in that space allowed some magic to come through. Maybe that breath and that break, kind of that circuit breaker of just sitting on that bench enabled you to have an idea that probably wouldn't have occurred to you, because or something that a therapist once told me when I was talking to her about play and creativity is just that you can't play if you're not safe. That safety is a prerequisite for being able to play. I mean, we all hear the proverbial like bear in the woods. Obviously, if a bear is chasing you in the woods, you're not like, oh, let me go frolic in this brook over here. I mean, you are if you want to get eaten by said bear, but you have to have this sense of safety for you to be able to play. And having that pause and that ability to kind of get out of the survival mode of the anxiety allows that magic and that creativity to come in and kind of feel safe to make itself known in a way that's not going to happen if you're in this constant survival mode.
Yeah, 100%. And you have to believe. I mean, it is actually an act of faith.
Yeah.
To believe that can happen, because I think we get so caught up in this idea that we have to do in order to accomplish whatever it is. And to your
then
point,
it's all on us.
All on us. Right.
No help, no intervention from wherever the intervention could come from, human or divine. Just no, it's all on me. Keep going.
Exactly. And so it is a profound leap of faith to embrace this idea that if I just sit quietly and do nothing for a moment or a couple moments, or, just stay very present, that magic can in fact come in. So I think it really is a beautiful thing. And again, it just goes back to this idea of belief, like, thinking about the elves and how we're talking about that. And, if you don't believe, you're not going to look for it. You're not going to look for the things that are magic in life. You're not going to look for opportunities, even to advance opportunities that might be in fact right under your nose. You just don't see it because you're looping around the park, or you're caught up in some mental loop, and there's a lack of presence. So it's a choice. It is a choice actually to believe that these things can happen, because if you're looking for good things, you're going to find good things more so than if you're only looking for the difficulties and the harder parts of life, which will happen. They will always happen. That is, again, condition of existence.
Yeah, you're not failing, or there's not something inherently wrong with you if bad things are happening. Brains are really powerful, and what we focus on is what persists in our life, because that's basically what you're telling your brain you want to focus on. So it'll be like, okay, it's like when you buy the car and then all of a sudden you see the car everywhere, because your brain's like, oh, this is what we like. This is what we want to focus on. And yeah, it is both neuroscience and a leap of faith to choose what you focus on, and then have, if you choose this magic, this wonder, if you believe that good things can happen in your life, and you don't make those big things giant bags of cash or private jets. I mean, sure, maybe that would be nice, but if you are willing to embrace all of the magic of life and believe in it and look for it, you will find it.
So the question of whether things are real or not, it is very real. That is very real as long as you believe in it. And that's, those are sort of the conversations that we're having, and albeit like imperfectly, I'm sure at times, we're gonna stumble through this whole process with the elves and other things. But again, leaving yourself open to the possibility that there is in fact magic, and there are beautiful things that can come into this messy, complicated, at times very difficult, hard, sad life is profound. Yep. Profound beauty. So I think that, so that's, again, thinking about how elves apply to our professional lives, apply to leadership, apply to our personal lives.
There's a very linear, direct connection.
Very direct.
We would posit.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I think, there are lessons everywhere. So that's really, I think, what we're hoping this podcast can be, is an exploration of these different ideas that don't fit into neat boxes around leadership. Again, you expect to see things about, again, executive presence, which we'll do. We do that, as you know, as for our clients and the folks that we work with. But there's way more to it, right? Because we are whole human beings. So, you know, we'll talk about things like elves or presence. You know, we're going to talk about meditation and other tools and getting out in nature and, you know, I don't know, just different things that we run into.
Just stuff that we're doing and think are interesting and frankly that we want to have a conversation about, and hopefully other people would love to join us in this conversation. So we think that's a pretty good place to stop and wrap up, and just thank people for listening, who stuck with us through all the meanderings and the tangents, and wish everybody the magic of this season and frankly all the seasons.